All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode, the last episode of 2025. This was a year that we could have, and then we'll go into the next year, which will be another year to have. So that's as best as I can say. So we'll see how it all goes. That didn't sound very optimistic. Hopefully, you know what, let's say this. Hopefully next year is better. Hopefully it's better all around for all things, right? I think we should all have this optimism. Anyways, so this is a question and answer based podcast. If you have a question about OCD or anxiety, shoot me an email. Go over to fearcastpodcast.com, click on the submit a question link, and you can send me a question there. You can send me an audio question, which today I'm going to be answering the audio question. Not only that, I'm going to answer 2 audio questions because this episode is coming out a little later than normal. This December has been a little bit bonkers. And I'm not going to have an episode next week and maybe not the weekend after that because I am not going to be in the office and I don't really do these in advance. So I'm doing this on the Tuesday before Christmas and hence my Christmassy getup. So if you are watching me on the YouTubes, you see if you're just listening to this, just imagine something festive, whatever you think is festive, or whatever ridiculous thing that you would like to put me in. So you can imagine full Santa outfit. You can imagine Mrs. Claus outfit. You can imagine maybe just, I don't know, Mrs. Claus Christmas night after all the presents are delivered. I don't know, whatever you want to imagine, just put me in it. I don't care, which is another way for us to realize that our imagination can do all sorts of crazy, fun, ridiculous, silly, scary, terrifying things. And we can also have some fun with it. So even when your brain gives you terrible, horrible, scary, awful, unwanted thoughts, you can use your imagination for good. So for another conversation. All right. So, yes, you can send me a message over there by clicking on the speech pipe button. Record your voicemail. It sends it directly to me. I get it, listen to it, we'll likely put it up. Those get to the tippy top of the list, which is also what is happening today. I got a question from Ruby and I got a question from Emily, and I'll be answering both of their questions today. So you can also go over to Instagram. I'm Fearcast Podcast over there. Send me a DM. You get the idea. So. All right, everybody. First, before I get into this, at the end of the year, I just want to say thank you, or I want to be appreciative and say thank you to everybody out there who listens, everybody out there who watches, everybody out there who puts a 5-star rating or writes a review. All of that stuff is meaningful. It helps the podcast. I don't advertise. I'm barely good at social media. No, I'm bad at social media. Period, hard stop. But every review, every star, every time you tell someone, every time you forward a link to somebody, it helps the podcast just a little bit. If you're listening to this, it's because you heard about it from someplace. So getting the information out there is ultimately just helpful. So thank you for letting me be a part of your recovery journey, as cheesy as it is to say that. It means the world to me just to know that I can help in any sort of way, as good or as unhelpful as it may be sometimes. Hopefully it's more helpful than unhelpful, but you get the idea. So we're all trying to do our best with minute or 2 minute long questions. But anyways, so thank you all so much. And I do hope everybody out there has a great new year, has a great holiday season, and ultimately has a better year with their mental health. I think we can all use it. And that's my hope for everybody. So, all right. So let's get on to the questions. So I've got 2 questions again. So today's going to be a little. It'll start a little heavy. It'll go a little less heavy, but still a little. It's very Freudian. It's very sex and death. But you'll hear about it in just a moment. So we'll start with Ruby's question, and then we'll go into Emily's question, and I'll play them. Play it, talk about it. You know how it goes, y'all. You've heard this before. All right, let's get on to the questions.
Hi, Kevin. I hope you're doing well. I got newly diagnosed with severe OCD with the theme of suicide, so suicidal OCD. It's been very difficult. It's been about 2 months since I got diagnosed. I'm just wondering if you'd be able to give me pointers, or anyone else suffering with this particular theme, on how to, kind of manage this OCD and thoughts. One of my most distressing thoughts is, what if I, become so depressed that I commit it. Um, so I'm just wondering if there are any helpful tips, or steps that one can take and practice every single day, to hopefully, you know, overcome OCD, or just simply just manage it so it's not as distressing. Um, yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, Ruby, thank you so much for sending that in. So, this is one of the heavier questions that I know we would have to get to. I appreciate, Ruby, that you sent this question in, because this is one of those kind of like scary, kind of red hot topicy subtypes that people don't want to talk about. It is it's a touchy subject for perhaps obvious reasons, and here's an example of how it's so touchy. So there's a great very small OCD book called The Imp of the Mind. Everyone go read it. Go read it. If you haven't read it, go read it. And there are two sections that freak everybody out. One of these sections has to do with suicidal ideation and suicidal obsessions in particular, right? Because as therapists, our job is to help someone flourish and thrive and do better. And the killing yourself is not that. It's kind of the opposite of that. And we have lot of things going against us for this process. One, we have these ethical and legal mandates that are in the back of our heads that we're going to, we hear our ethics professors barking in the back of our ears, the ghosts of our ethics professors back there, just going like, you have to do something about this. This is very dangerous. You got to help this harmless. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be bad. So we hear all these stories and it's awful and blah 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 blah. So it gets our hackles up and we get activated when we start hearing about suicidal thoughts. Right now, that is fueled further by our natural desire to help someone and to have someone not hurt themselves in any sort of way. So I hate to surprise you, but therapists get into this whole therapy thing because we want people to be happy and to flourish and to do all of that. So we have the feels and it gets us and we feel obligated. So you get the idea. So it's a touchy subject in that way because it we kind of go like, all right, how are we supposed to best to deal with this? And I think, I think Ruby, you're kind of dealing with this too. Is like, all right, how do you best deal with this, right? Do I treat this? Do I treat this obsession? Do I treat this thought as genuine suicidal ideation? So thoughts that you're actually going to harm yourself, in which case we go through this whole process to help someone to get through that, to put them in a safe place, to put them in a safe environment so they can kind of get through that hump, so they can help their mental health that is contributing to this, help the depression that's contributing to it. Or do I treat it like an obsession and treat it like it's just a thought, in which case we're not going to treat it exactly the same way as if it was genuine suicidal thoughts, right? In which case, we might engage with exposure and response prevention. We might lean into the thoughts that will feel scary, but are we indulging in suicidal thoughts when we miss it, when we could miss it, genuine stuff? So you get where this is kind of fraught. Now, I'm going to say this, Ruby, to you and to anybody else who's listening. If you are, I know this is risky, and all right, it's a risky conversation. And I'm going to say this, and it might be triggering to some people, and it's going to be something that is advisable for anybody in this situation as well. If you believe that you are having genuine thoughts of harming yourself, when anxiety or depression is getting too much, or the stress of life, the stress of the season, the holiday season, the New Year's is a time when suicidal ideation, unfortunately, spikes, it skyrockets for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. So if this is a time when you feel like you are having those thoughts, I implore you, I encourage you, to go to the nearest emergency room, to call 911. If you're in another country, to call your local medical services, to go down to a hospital, to talk to a psychiatrist, talk to someone, talk to the police. You can talk to 911 if you're an American, whatever that is in your country. But go talk to somebody, right? I know a lot of people are afraid, well, they're going to put me in a hospital or they're going to something like that. I don't know if they will or they won't, but I would rather take that risk that maybe that's going to happen to put you in a safe place, to put you in a place where you can be supported and encouraged, and in a place that is outside of or removed from any dangerous situations, so that you could ride through that wave of that particularly hard time to get to a time when maybe that more rational thought is more present, and that you can kind of think through those situations a little bit easier. So that's what I want to say at the top of this. I make a silly joke, to no surprise, that I say my job is to help you get back to a life worth living, and it's a lot easier to do that when you are still alive. So that is the reason that we go through that whole process, right? For in a number of reasons. So, all right, so it's kind of like, how do you deal with this, Ruby? So you kind of asked, like, what are some things that you can do on like a day to day to help just kind of manage this, right? So, again, I'll ask the question. I'll encourage you to consider, like, are you having Oh, I want to say this. Sorry, I want to say this in advance, or say this before I say the other things in advance. You get the idea. Second to my encouragement about going to a hospital if you're having genuine suicidal thoughts. Secondly, is I would encourage you to then work with a therapist. Having these conversations with them will help kind of pull apart what is genuine suicidal ideation and what is an obsession, right? So what is OCD presenting and attaching onto suicidal thoughts, or using suicidal ideation as a compulsion or as a focus for something, right? So that's where it's important to be like talking these things through. So Ruby, I can't tell from your question, how much is it one or the other. I'm going to take it as if you are saying that you are not genuinely thinking of doing this, but that you notice this as an obsession, right? And this obsession kind of shows up for a lot of people. It's like it's any sort of obsession, right? What if I do this? And your question was like, what if I get so depressed that I then want to harm myself, right? What I kind of hear in that sometimes when I'm working with someone who has suicidal OCD is like, okay, I'm not now, but what if I become, right? So there can be a lot of things that somebody does with this to, to kind of to kind of anticipate what could happen, what might happen, what it would be like, right? And we'll talk about some compulsions as we go on. So for, if it is, for those who are out there who are listening to this, if genuine suicidal thoughts do start to come up, talk with your therapist and you develop a safety plan, right? That safety plan can include going to a hospital, calling 911, emergency services, whatever it might be. But you also develop a safety plan for like when these thoughts pop up, right? Some of it might include, it may not have all of this. It will probably have other things too, but it can be spending more time with friends or family or meaningful people in your life, right? That offer a sense of support and encouragement and love, and an opportunity to get your mind off of this depression or off of something that is stressing you out or bringing you down in a way, and just kind of floating through that time with friends, doing almost whatever to kind of get through that time when, again, that depression, anxiety, those thoughts start to subside, right? The other thing might include eliminating sources of harm, right? So sometimes it might be, if there are thoughts that include, dangerous items in the house, knives, medication, pills, firearms, any sort of those things. It's to hand those off to people who are going to be able to hold those until a time when those thoughts aren't thoughts aren't as present. It might include self-care activities, right? Doing things intentionally that you enjoy, that you like doing, that bring you a sense of hope and optimism. And I know when you're feeling depressed, one of the things that happens, unfortunately, is that sense of joy gets sapped. It pulls away, and you start to feel that, or the things you typically would enjoy don't bring you that enjoyment anymore. So what do you do, right? Especially when someone says, like, do something you enjoy. But you go, I don't enjoy it. my encouragement is do those things anyways. Do the things that you typically find joy or historically have found enjoyment in, because it may bring it. Now, you may not experience it that moment, but it's going to it's going to put you in a place, an opportunity to feel that more than if you sit and do absolutely nothing, right? So we want to put yourself in those opportunities for success. Other things that it may include for the safety plan, it might include check-ins with your therapist. It might include more frequent sessions with a therapist. But again, those are all some things that kind of help kind of keep you afloat through that time. Now, if it is just fears of becoming that, you are not now, and you're saying, I don't want to, it's not me, but I'm obsessed about what if I become that. This is a different story, right? As with everything, first and foremost, think about, well, what are the compulsions that you're engaging with in that process, right? We want to be pulling back on compulsions through OCD, right? So common ones for suicidal OCD can be overanalyzing your feelings, right? So constantly being in your head. Do I feel depressed? How depressed do I feel? Do I feel like I want to harm myself? What would that feel like? And then experimenting with those feelings, right? All of that can ultimately be compulsive because it's just checking, right? Um, it can be reviewing, right? Mental review of your day. How did I feel during the day? Did I feel depressed? Did I feel overly depressed? Did I feel too depressed? Did I feel more depressed? Am I on a downward slope? Am I starting to feel better? If I'm not feeling, if I'm not feeling better, well, how much longer can I handle it, right? So these are other things that some folks might go through. They might compare their day to happier days, right? So they're kind of evaluating, do I feel more depressed? They might compare it to Saturdays, like not Saturday, you get the idea. So like more days where you felt more depressed, right? Oh, this day I did have suicidal thoughts. Do I feel as depressed as that day? So therefore, am I close to getting those thoughts, or will those thoughts be coming up shortly? Or, am I more prone to those, or should I have those thoughts, right? Comparing yourself to others, how happy other people feel, beating yourself up for not feeling what all these weirdo happy people are feeling all over, right? Or mentally rehearsing, for some, it's mentally rehearsing how you'd do it. And then, in various different ways, and then experimenting or evaluating the feelings that you have. Does it feel right? Does it feel good? Does it feel relief? Does it feel joy? And this can have a backwards process, right? Because oftentimes oftentimes what I find with suicidal OCD, it's kind of a thought about, well, it's what if I do something that's going to irrevocably change the rest of my life, which it will. And it's like, what if I'm never going to be happy again? And what if I do something that could potentially bring some sense of relief, right? Sometimes that rumination about harming yourself, it can be, well, why it's a compulsion is there can be this sense of, okay, then my pain would be gone. And that can bring peace, that can bring enjoyment, like fantasizing about a life where you don't have depression or anxiety or stress or the torment of obsessions. That can feel like a relief, like a reprieve from it for just a moment. And that can be a backdoor spike into your brain then saying, see, you felt at peace with this thought. It means you want to do it. So you are suicidal and you're back to the races, right? So that's where we're trying to say, we're trying to catch ourselves when we start falling into these compulsive cycles, knowing that the compulsions don't actually produce what OCD suggests it's going to do, right? OCD is high promise, low follow through, if anything, right? So it's just going to continue to produce this. So some things that you can do in this: number one, catch yourselves in your compulsions. Two, remind yourself, this is a thought and this thought will pass, or this feeling that I have is uncomfortable and it sucks and I hate it. And that too is going to pass. Everything that you feel, good or bad or otherwise, it's always going to pass. You've never felt one thing forever, and you won't, as good or as bad as you feel. So you can get through this too, because you've gotten through a bunch of stuff before, okay? Treating them as thoughts, right? Remember that we aren't our thoughts. Just because we have a thought doesn't mean that we have to do it. And just because we have a thought doesn't mean it reflects who we are, what we're about, what we want, where we're going, what we should want, etc., etc. our brain just gives us stuff to think about. And sometimes I think that suicidal ideation and suicidal thoughts are our brain's way of problem solving pain and distress in our life. Hear me out. I think this is kind of adaptive in a maladaptive way. And everyone gets these. I get these. We get these thoughts sometimes. It's this idea that, like, all right, something in my life sucks right now, and I need to change that thing that sucks. Okay, so what can I do to change the thing that sucks, right? This is where depression becomes adaptive, where we hyper focus on the thing, the suckage in our life, and we go, let me think about the things that suck. What can I change? What can I do different? What can I eliminate? What can I add that will help me get through this, or that I can do to get past this, right? So one of the things can be, all right, I'm feeling really depressed or feeling really anxious. Well, what can I do? Well, I could talk to a therapist. I could go for a run. I could read a book. I could talk. I could call my friend. I could play video games. I could start doing coke. I could kill myself. I could I could go. I could learn to juggle. I could swim. I could sing a song. Right? These are all things that your brain could identify as things that could be helpful. Some of those things I mentioned were a lot helpful than other things, right? But in the problem solving process that our brain sometimes goes through, it will identify things that are unhelpful. It's kind of like when your brain goes, ooh, I'm mad. What should I do? I should take a breath. I should sit down. I should journal. I should have some water. I should punch that person in the face. I should kill them. I should throw them into the sun. I should take a long shower, right? Some of those things are more helpful than others. Okay, so treating them as not thoughts. Non engagement responses can also be helpful. Non engagement responses are going to be things like noticing the thought itself, right? Noticing that it feels a certain way, noticing the outcome, right? So you can say, like, excuse me, you can say, like, you know, gosh, that thought makes me feel really uncomfortable, or that thought makes me feel really scared. It does. It feels really scary. Maybe there's an urge like, oh man, I really want to review my day, or I really want to, I really want to compare my feelings. I really want to delve into how I'm thinking and feeling right now. Yeah, you might be feeling that. The non-engagement responses acknowledge that there is an urge, a thought, a sensation. And then we're saying, yeah, it's there. I see it. I know it. And yet, I'm going to do something else, something more meaningful. Rather than getting hooked into this other thing, I'm going to make a choice that's going to lead me towards more adaptive responses. But I'm not going to pretend like those thoughts aren't there in the first place, right? I like also acknowledging just like what the outcome would be. And we can say, like, yeah, that would suck. Boy, if I did that, that would suck, right? Yeah, it would suck because it wouldn't give you the opportunity to experience all the good that could happen in life, that will happen in life after that feeling subsides, right? So another thing you can do is, yeah, let's see, like again, redirection into more meaningful activities rather than compulsions, right? So again, it may be for this time while I'm having this thought, okay, I know that it's there, but you know what? I'm gonna go watch TV. I'm gonna go watch Muppet Christmas Carol. And by the way, everyone out there, go watch Muppet Christmas Carol. It's the best. I think it's the best. But I'm a weirdo, and I like things like that. So, anyways, yeah, go watch it, or go watch Scrooged. That's another super weird one. Or go watch Spirited. These are all just variations on the Christmas Carol. I'm realizing. Um, Go watch something. All right. Point is, there's a lot of things that we can do that make us feel that are more meaningful or valuable to us, right? That again are important, that help keep our head afloat, that we're going to take that feeling and that thought along with us and go, okay, got this crappy thought, bring it on. But for right now, I'm going to go call up a friend. I'm going to go play some music. I'm going to go listen to some music. I'm going to go clean my room. I'm going to go send out those emails I need to send out. We're going to go do those things, but they're even slightly more meaningful than spending even a minute more ruminating than you have, right? So, and now I'll say this. So those are all like things that you can do to deal with the thoughts that are there. Now I'll say this. There are exposures certainly that you can do if this obsession is an obsession, right? But work with a therapist on this to talk about what the purpose of the exposure would be. What is the fear that you're trying to get at, rather than it just being broadly to, the thought of dying or the thought of killing yourself. What is it about that that feels so scary? Is it the idea of losing control? Is the, again, that you're going to make a choice that everything that will change everything and you cannot go back, right? So now life is entirely different, or everything is entirely different. That's where you want to be specific, and that's where scripting can be really helpful, because then you can write out that story and what are the consequences to it, and then what happens, what you think and feel and how it goes, and you play that story out over and over and over again to the point where you can have the thought without engaging in those compulsive behaviors, right? Scripting can be a game changer for a lot of people. I know a lot of people don't like him. Some people advise against them, but for the vast majority of people that I've worked with, scripting has been an incredibly helpful tool to allowing for that thought to be there while practicing resisting compulsions and just playing that story out and learning that that thought, though unwanted and kind of sucky, is a thought that you can get through. There are also movies you can watch about suicide. What Dreams May Come has been a movie that I've recommended a lot of people watch. It is uncomfortable. It's scary. It's also beautiful and kind of fantastical in a lot of different ways. But it does touch on themes of death. It touches on themes of killing yourself. It touches on themes of depression and other mental health issues. So it can be a heavy movie. But again, that's the point, right? You're watching this movie to bring up this feeling that you say, like, yeah, this feels bad, but I can handle this feeling, and this feeling will pass. And it's hard, right? Remember, the biggest thing that we're trying to do for every question that's ever going to come, and every person that comes into this office: do fewer compulsions, live more life. Whatever that is, what's more life for you? That's where you should be engaging and spending less time in the rumination about it. All right, so I'm going to move past this, Ruby. So I appreciate your question. It's such an important question for a lot of folks. So I appreciate you taking the risk to send it to me and sharing it. So I hope that was helpful. So let's get on to Emily's question.
Hi, Kevin. My name is Emily, and I've been struggling with OCD and intrusive thoughts and what I believe to be is limerence towards my therapist. I think about her all the time, look at her social media, Google her, anything to feel closer to her, and live in a fantasy world. Um, I believe my obsession with her is because I feel the safest around her. She knows everything about me and has never judged me. I feel like we have made a lot of really great progress together in therapy, and I don't want this to become any more of a distraction for me in therapy. She does know about these feelings, and we have talked about them, and we're navigating them as they arise. But I feel the longing feeling getting worse and worse over time. And it physically hurts to understand logically that she cannot be in my life the way I think. The OCD side of me says, what if though, and holds out hope that someday it could be. Do you have any suggestions for navigating these thoughts and emotions so we can continue to make progress together?
All right, Emily, thank you so much for that question. It's a great question. It is. I don't think I've had a question on limerence before, and so I appreciate you sending that in and sharing so much about that. There's so much to unpack with this. I'm not going to do it full justice. I'm going to try to just kind of go through some high points on this, but this is stuff that sometimes happens in therapy. This is sometimes stuff that happens in life. Now, limerence is a term is like I first heard about the term limerence like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and it felt like I'm like I don't even know what to do with this term, right? It feels like it it feels like it's like a splitting hairs, or just trying to find a word for a feeling that you're having of maybe unrequited love or something to that effect, and we're just got to put a name to it. But despite my sarcastic old man grumblings about nonsense and get off my lawn with new terms and having to learn new things and experience things that other people are experiencing that maybe I'm not. It's still a real thing. It's still something that some people go through. And Emily, something sounds like something that you're going through. So, so to a certain degree, what I want to say with this is that some of what you're experiencing is something that can happen in therapy. I wouldn't say like it's normal in therapy. I would say it may not be normal, like everyone who goes through therapy ought to expect this. They ought to expect some things I'm going to talk about, but what you're talking about is kind of that romantic, what's called romantic transference. Now, this is something that is pulled more from kind of like traditional, like Freudian therapy, where there's this. I'm not even going to get into the theory behind it, but it's this idea. It's something that can happen where some clients can start to notice a growing kind of romantic or sometimes even sexual desire towards their therapist. And that can be for a lot of reasons, right? But so think about this romantic transfer as inappropriate sexual or romantic attachment to a therapist within the therapeutic relationship, right? So keep that in mind as we're talking about this, because a term for limerence, for those who are unaware. So limerence, I'll give this like brief, like perhaps very broad definition. So one definition I found is so limerence arises from when deep-seated emotional needs meet a person who provides just enough intermittent hope or attention to trigger a powerful involuntary obsession, creating a cycle of fantasy, craving, and suffering. Sounds like Emily's question, right? So it's this kind of sense of like it's kind of limerence can think about this. It's like the first part of falling in love with somebody, right? You think about them, you maybe start fantasizing about what a life like them with them would be, right? You may have more sexual thoughts, like what would it be like to hold them, to hug them, to kiss them, to have sex with them, right? All these questions about fantasies that bring joy and excitement and maybe even peace and hope and all this stuff, right? And it's great and it's exciting. And it's exciting when the other person also feels that for you. And that is where love and limerence start to fall apart. It's that limerence is all of those things, but it's only one-sided. It's the other person is not expressing that towards you in a meaningful in a reciprocal sort of way, right? So um, this sometimes happens out of an attachment problem. Now, I haven't really talked about attachment because I would say I'm not the biggest, I'm not the most adept at attachment, but that is part of my New Year's resolution, is to get more adept at that. I know I read about it and knew how to answer questions about that back in the day in grad school, but in OCD land, you don't talk about that as much. I know some people out there who are therapists who are listening and going like, I talk about this every day. And guess what? I don't, okay? Some people don't. So I don't. But I will. I will talk about it and research it more. Anyways, there will be more on that later. But sometimes it can happen from an anxious attachment style or an anxious, anyways, you get the idea. Where it's in a sense that early childhood relationships with caregivers, so I'll give this definition. All right, so caregivers were inconsistent, making individuals crave connection and validation, but those needs were not met, right? So it's from like kind of an emotionally unavailable person, right? So think about like if a child is wanting attention, wanting care, wanting responses, wanting to know that they're safe, wanting to know that they are loved, wanting to know that the world around them is safe, and the parent is inconsistent with that, right? So they sometimes will give that, but sometimes they withhold that, intentionally or unintentionally, right? So creates this cycle of wanting and seeking, which is what not often, it's what children are doing. They're wanting that connection and love and validation from their primary caregivers and from their caregivers in general. And when they're not getting it, it can produce a wound in their attachment style, right? Which produces all these things. A therapist can help with that. A therapist is someone who hopefully provides care and attention and validation and support and not judgment when those needs were perhaps, well, first off, that's what they should be doing. And when those needs were not met from a parent, it can actually provide a reparative experience. So in other words, it can show a person that they can have relationships with someone who is going to be present and responsive, and is going to be caring, and is going to be encouraging, but is also going to be consistent. That is going to repair, problems within the relationship or have rifts or wounds in the relationship, they're going to, instead of abandoning them, they're going to take the time to talk it out, to work through that, and to get back to a healthy dynamic, right? Now, if someone does not have that, it feels great. It feels great to be in a relationship with someone who can provide that for someone who doesn't, right? Boy, wouldn't it feel great to know that you can talk to someone, you can talk to them about anything and not pretend or hide or have to be something that you're not, in order to, or constantly be in a relationship where you have to question and evaluate and discern and micromanage and all these things in order for that relationship to work. That sounds great, right? So, but the problem is, a therapist is another unavailable person romantically. Now, I'm going to say this, they should be someone who is unavailable romantically. If you are in a therapeutic relationship and that therapist is hitting on you, or that therapist is contacting you outside of therapy, and they are spending time with you outside of therapy, and you are building relationships with this person and being in therapy with them, that is not good, okay? And much less having sex with that therapist. Don't. It's bad for everybody. So I feel it's frustrating that I have to say that. We Side note, there is a thing that therapists have. It is a pamphlet that is called "Professional Therapy Never Includes Sex," and it's a thing that you learn about in grad school. And the acronym that I knew to memorize this was professional ethical therapy. So ethical therapy was one word. So professional ethical therapy never includes sex, because the acronym is then penis. So anyways, that's how I remembered it. But I've had to give this out to clients where I've heard that they have had either romantic relationships with their therapist, or that their therapist is pursuing an inappropriate relationship outside of therapy, and that ain't okay. And I've had to more than one time, I've had to give them this. It is bonkers. Bonkers. Anyways, all right. Getting back to Emily's question. Okay. So, all right, so we've kind of talked about this, but again, this is another unavailable person. But I want you to think about, I'm curious about, what are you fantasizing about? What is it that you're thinking that you would have in this relationship? In other words, what fuels the fantasy? Is it that you would have friendship with this person, that you would have connection, that you'd have happiness, that you have love? What is it that you're wanting, right? Because the OCD is always going to suggest that the thing that you want, the thing that you crave is attainable, and if you just get X, it'll be okay. If you just do Y, you'll be fine again. But it's never, right? Like all obsessions, it's never going to work out that way, because even if you were to get your therapist, and don't get your therapist romantically, but if you were to get it, you would still be missing something, right? And that's where the attachment comes in, and that's where we're recognizing that the limerence that you're experiencing is more along the lines of an obsession, and this idea of I just have to get. It's kind of like a need to know type of obsession. It's not that you get that information, it's that there's this drive to have. And it can be certainly mixed with this attachment issue of this need to have something relationally, something differently dynamically, but that isn't going to be found within that therapist as a relational partner or a romantic partner. It's going to be found through finding that you are still loved and supported and encouraged from people who are emotionally available. All right. So, but it's also this. I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound crazy. All right, could your relationship with your therapist work if you met them outside of therapy and you had a relationship with them? It could. It might. That person might be the person that brings total joy to your life. I'm not saying it's not, but that's also part of what's going to fuel this, right? The reality is, in the relationship, the dynamic that you're currently in, they are unavailable. And that's going to keep this cycle happening. All right, so what can we do with this? Number one, like I mentioned in Ruby's question, we got to resist those compulsions, right? So you noted that you're engaging in a bunch of compulsions, right? Checking out their social media, engaging with this fantasy about this person and what your life would look like, right? I think that's part of that wishing compulsion as well. Catch yourself when all those things are happening. Bring yourself back to reality and remind yourself that you're engaging in the fantasy, you're engaging in that compulsion. And instead, you can spend some time to reflect back on whether or not you're in a place where you needed some extra love and support, you needed some extra connection, and you drifted off to this fantasy to achieve that, right? Was there something in that you were feeling that you were needing that you relied on your imagination for rather than pursuing it in real life, right? So to that end, one thing that you could also do with this is work on pursuing healthy relationships outside of therapy. So this can be either friendships, this can be romantic relationships, but doing so with available, supportive, and emotionally present people, right? So in other words, people who are going to reciprocate that, not just pull from you. If you find that you are constantly giving into this relationship and they are giving back, that's not how a reciprocal friendship and that's not how a reciprocal romantic relationships work, right? So part of that is also building those boundaries to saying no and to saying no to situations that will feel like you're missing out on something that could be great, but also recognizing the patterns that you find yourself in and knowing that the healing process is by putting yourself in situations that actually that build you up, that give you that support and encouragement and love and support that you need, right? So the last thing is what I'll say is I know because I also know that you said that you're working through this with your therapist, which is great, but you also said that it's kind of getting worse, right? Um, if that's the case, it may be time to take a break from this therapist for right now. What that means is I'd encourage you, because it sounds like you've made some progress with your OCD, whatever it was, and that now these limerence feelings are occurring. So it may be time to take a break from this therapist and instead to work with an attachment therapist to work on some of the underlying things that are fueling and contributing to this sense of limerence, and to see if you can get back on track and start to heal from some of that and develop a more secure attachment style. And then in which case, if you feel like you can then revisit this therapeutic relationship, great, then go for it. But it may be time to take a break from that therapist. And I know that's going to sound like avoidance, and I know that's going to sound like just putting your head in the sand and hoping it's going to go away. But it's also like saying, hey, if something's not working, if something's getting worse, it's like trying to drink your way into sobriety. It ain't going to work, right? If sometimes we need to take a break from the thing that is harmful from us and contributing to a sense of pain in order for us to get back to a level set, get back to a sense of stability, so that you can go back and engage with that relationship and tolerate those thoughts, know that those thoughts are, this is OCD, right? Those thoughts are going to come and they're going to go. Is it the fantasy? Is the fantasy true? I don't know, but we have to live with that uncertainty because this person is not going to and cannot, should not reciprocate those romantic feelings that you are noticing. So instead, pursuing those romantic feelings with other folks outside of your therapist. So, all right, Emily, I hope that this has been helpful in giving you something to think about. Recovery is possible. You can have some recovery from this. So I hope this offers some encouragement for you. So to Emily and Ruby, thank you both of you for sending in those questions. To everybody else out there, again, thank you so much for sharing your stories, for sharing being so vulnerable and sharing your questions on this podcast. It means the world to me, and I think it means the world to a lot of other people out there who are listening who may need to hear that supportive word. Now, also, as I say always, if I miss something, and if you're listening out there and you're an expert in limerence, and you're like, Kevin just screwed it up and you missed everything, email me. Great. Let's have you on to talk about it. If there's something that you would like to offer Emily, or if there's some information and suggestions you'd like to offer Ruby, send them in. I will share them at the next podcast. I promise I will do that. This show is about you, and I want this information to be good and helpful and supportive out there. All right, everybody. That's all I'll say about this. Have a great New Year's. Have a wonderful holiday for those of you who are celebrating a holiday. But either way, I hope you're finding peace, encouragement, and support, and freedom from anxiety, depression, and other mental health worries during this time. So until next time, everybody, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.